The Sleepers, Chapter 27, Hot Seat. Nothing could stop Ray from changing the world, beginning with D.C. He had prepared. This was not just blind optimism. Engine troubles on the company jet, extended searches at the Capitol, all just trivial pit stops on the way to victory. Years of losing student body elections and failing relationships hadn't taught him to lose. They had prepared him to win. Any minute he would present his research to the SSC. Unshakable confidence stretched his already giant smile. All his hard work came down to this presentation. He would show the results, wow Senator Esperanza with his proposal, and lead an entirely new company, new America, even new world. But first he'd go home, embrace the beautiful, amazing Gabby, rub his hands through that blissful mess of red hair, kiss her heart out, and propose in marriage. You can't lead the world's most important company without an amazing companion. Gabby was the right woman to have at his side. The SSC recorder seated Ray and his lawyers at the small central table. His team was at the meeting early, but his father had warned him. "Don't worry, son. Senator Esperanza just copies her mentor, the terrible Senator Blair, and likes to make you wait. They'll show." Ray replayed his presentation in his mind over and over, including some rehearsed jokes, just passing the time. His chair squeaked as he rocked. Having memorized his script, there was no paper to shuffle, and phones were strictly banned. At last they entered. Respect dictated that his entourage stand. The SSC members were 10 minutes late, or right on time as Richard Madsen promised. His father sure knew the system. Senator Esperanza stood proud in center. Long black curls marked her dark features and deep brown eyes. Her voice was that distinct mix of Texan Latina, her proud ancestry. She motioned them to sit and demanded introductions for the recorder, as this was his first time giving testimony at an SSC hearing. Visits were almost exclusively the responsibility of the CEO. Dr. Ray Huxley Madsen, Frontier Science Division, SleepFree Inc. Official orders finished, she invited Ray to begin. He had no butterflies. This was going to be easy with so much practice, and the material sold itself. Reaching for the tilted mic, Ray deftly seized control of the room and commenced. Ears perked and eyes widened as the SSC listened attentively to all of Ray's presentation. His father had warned him that the SSC would interrupt him, try to rile him up. But here was pure courtesy. Slide after slide zipped by without question or complaint. Even the senator's breathing seemed muted. The 5 faces before him were definitely not angry or doubtful, just quiet and awed. Yet there was life there, and he was gonna win the day. Ray wrapped up his prepared materials without question. 5 politicians had never been so silent.
No one moved on the panel. They deferred to Senator Lucy Esperanza. She may have bled Texan charm, but she ran a firmer committee than her mentor. No one walked out of line. And a topic like today begged total deference to the committee head. Dr. Madsen broke the silence before she could speak. She loved crafting awkward silence for the technical people. They always broke first. He adjusted nervously in his chair, a rickety beast she devilishly refused to let anyone grease, and leaned in expectantly. "So, that's my presentation. If there are no technical questions, perhaps we should move to the human trials and the ultimate commercialization process." She made an imperceptible shake of the head in disappointment, one that would look more like a twitch than annoyance, and stopped herself short of rolling her eyes. He actually believed this was going somewhere? Why did scientists only see things in terms of technical questions? Oh well, today was going to hurt. Lucy understood her obligation to her heritage, her post, and America. As much as it hurt, she knew she'd have to preserve the stability of the sleeper system. Blair had been fairly explicit in training her protege. Harsh honesty was the only way to deal with Madsen family scientists. She coughed to clear her throat, the only gesture she'd make to ease his blow. "There is no need to discuss further trials, let alone commercialization, Dr. Madsen." Dr. Madsen's face contorted, not knowing what she meant, but she continued with the dagger. "That was an excellent overview of some very fine work. We are all very impressed by your enthusiasm and scientific method." "Thanks," he squeaked. That once proud voice now sounded a lot like that chair. She hadn't even delivered her message. He broke too fast. "But let me be clear." Her face took on a new sternness. She pointed with one strong finger like a scolding parent. "Your company created this monster, and we are not about to let you undo it. Everything depends on the sleeper-client balance." Young Madsen was struck mute. The man clearly had not prepared for this scenario. Of course they would be happy with his work. Her hands moved to grip the table edge, as if holding back her ferocity. "We thought we made it clear last time. You are never to pursue this work again. Do not ask again. Your company may have a short memory, but this panel does not." Confusion twisted Dr. Madsen's now depressed face. Confusion that bled his pathetic story. His practice was worthless. His dad's warnings were worthless. Richard Madsen left out the most important fact. These northeastern families lacked their secrets. Without moving closer to the mic, he mustered the obvious question. "What do you mean? I really don't know what you're talking about." The devastation on Dr. Madsen's face evoked a measure of pity in Lucy. She never liked Richard Madsen's face, too smug and all business. But this eager scientist, young and moldable, he was her type. Her head tilted in sympathy as she studied this pitiful creature. They would have quite the relationship in the future once he took over as CEO. He was doing his family duty and believed in something better. She could admire that. She'd slept for her share of people. When fracking was banned and her family moved to Houston, she had never been lucky enough to find a solid sleep gig with steady clients. So she logged in at the local sleep bank after school. Teenage Lucy would have died for Ray's invention, but she wasn't young Lucy anymore. And free borrowed sleep wouldn't have paid the bills. She would have been homeless. Hard to get into a good school if you have no place to rest at night. Whether sleepers might admit it or not, they needed sleep, and it was her job to protect them. She'd have to break Ray's heart. There was no tiptoeing against an emotionally invested scientist. Feelings were irrelevant at this point. Truth mattered more. Having released the table, her hands talked with her. "Dr. Madsen Ray, what do you think would happen if everyone had a sleeper? Consider hypothetically. You can't just create as a scientist. You must evaluate the consequences." She locked eyes with such intensity. Even the lawyer shuffled away from him. Would the world be better or worse? Don't answer that. You see the world through rosy glasses, but that's not the world. "But," Mr. Madsen tried to interrupt, unable to now stay quiet. "No," she stopped him, with a firm, outstretched palm. "Let me spell it out for you. This would end the sleeper system and Pax SleepFree. Decades of prosperity provided by your grandfather and the SSC in perfect harmony ruined. The economy, totally dependent on balancing sleepers and clients, ruined. the social contract to care for this pitiful class, ruined. You would put billions out of work, cause the greatest depression in history, and only the Madsen family and your shareholders would benefit. Shaking his head, he wanted to argue. He wanted to say that all current sleepers would now have time to do whatever they wanted, discover new life, but he held quiet against the senator's stern truth. I know you think that great things would happen, that you would liberate the world, but you've never been destitute. You've never been offered liberty, as you might see it, and yet had no meal and no bed. I have. Sleep saved my family. It saved me. It has a place, and you won't take that away. He shuddered, chilled by her words. She wouldn't let him interject now. Senator Blair was evidence that power could corrupt, even a country girl from Nebraska, but Senator Esperanza led the SSC because she truly believed in sleepers. The whole system was necessary. She couldn't pay for so many unemployed Americans, but sleep could. She owed this young man more explanation. Even in charge, she was not a monster. You see, Dr. Madsen, I didn't have to go home and ponder your creation. I'm not jumping to conclusions here. As I was saying, we've been here before. Dr. Desmond Madsen once came with similar news. Obviously, I wasn't here, per se, for this, but we do keep records at the SSC. The other four senators shot their incredulous or scathing looks. Perhaps a mix. Lucy Esperanza, as Senator Blair's acolyte and chosen heir, was given special rights, one of which was to read the files sealed and locked up by Blair herself, hidden even from other future SSC members. It was information that would have died with her and 4 faithful members present when Desmond came with similar news, but she squirreled it away for herself. Blair about hyperventilated, just handing it over to Lucy. Good thing she had. Lucy ignored the venom from her left and right counterparts, maintaining eye contact with the anguishing Dr. Madsen. We rejected it from your grandfather as we do so now. Plain and simple. Now, Dr. Madsen, you are either a brave fool for bringing this idea forward again, or someone's a dumb fool for not teaching you the family history. Knowing your father's track record, hard for me to say. Either way, our warning stands, and future committees will not be so forgiven. The work must stop, and a gag order issued immediately. I still don't understand, stammered Ray. He was breaking down, all that preparation pointless. What did Desmond tell you? My father would have shared this with me if he had known, I promise. Lucy was so sure of herself, but the pathetic expression on Ray's beaten face wore on her conscience. Duty had to win. She had a mission to preserve Pax SleepFree. Senator Blair had beaten that one into the junior Texas senator. Even if they disagreed on the why, nothing to do but beat the dead horse. Sounds like a family matter, Dr. Madsen. Either way, this is our last warning. For the sake of your family tree, for the sake of your company, understand this. The sleeper system is here to stay. We made sleep free, and we can destroy sleep free. Put a note in your presidential files. Tell your children, your children's children, do whatever you must, but do not come here again with such a proposal. Not in 10 years, not in 100 years. And tell no one, not the Chinese, not your future employees, no one. Try to release the information in some sort of stunt, and I will hold the Madsen family personally responsible. Just try to hang on to your precious company then. Coldness hung in the air. Ray was finished. He understood. Senator Esperanza was finished. The other SSC members never even started. Even the lawyers dared not whisper. There could be no argument. She jerked her attention away from the broken scientist. Recorder, seal the proceedings. This meeting is classified top secret for SSC members only. She looked at each member with eyes of flaming death, a challenge to all to dare disobey her orders and leak these proceedings. Scramblers were frying any electronic device that might be running within hearing distance. The room was shielded from observation. The records would be safe. One of Blair's parting gifts was to steamroll a rule through Congress that all SSC records were top secret until unsealed by the SSC chair. Well, these proceedings were never going to see light. The SSC had done its job again and saved America. She had saved America. It did feel as good as Blair described. Not a bad day. Well, probably a bad day for Ray Madsen. Dismissed!
Senator Esperanza rose and left the chambers, head high, followed in perfect line by her fellow senators. Ray was motionless. Nothing mattered. Everything he had done was for nothing. How would he tell his father? What would he tell his father? The legal team would document for the board a concise report and begin compliance. Too much was at risk not to comply. But what was left for Ray? One last peep from the chair answered his slumping body. Ray came rushing into my office 2 days later. Unless we missed our sleep transfer, an event I ensured was infrequent, he rarely visited my office. The dreaded news was imminent: marriage and sleep trials. He wasted no time to brag and make my life worse. "The Senate rejected my project!" He raised his head and cringed, visibly distraught. "They killed it! They issued an official moratorium on all associated research." I couldn't contain my relief. Without a pause, I responded with instinctive coldness. Was there ever any doubt? I wanted him to fail. I hated the SSC. I thought them rotten. But even I believed it might pass just to thwart me. Ray continued unaffected. "Esperanza argued for the stability of the sleeper system, saying, 'Everything depends on the sleeper-client balance. Your company created this monster, and we are not about to let you undo it.' It was harsh honesty. The proceedings were sealed." Apparently not so sealed that Ray couldn't quote something that must be racing through his mind on constant replay. Ray's fiasco vindicated my displeasure with the SSC. They were as heartless as I imagined. Career politicians clinging to a system which gave them power, detached from all sentiment about sleepers and their real dilemma. It was a game of rhetoric, and they were the winners. They would never let the system fall to pieces or allow Ray's family to replace it. My work would blossom while company men buried Ray's work deep away from prying eyes. Perceiving that my mind raced in thought, not in smart reply, Ray blubbered, "It's worse. They scolded me for coming back there with the same idea. Said we have a short memory, but they don't." He then outlined the whole proceedings and the work that must have been done by Desmond. Ray had dug through every old note he could find from Desmond's early research in the last years. He'd found every note on the potency of lucid transfer from blind sleepers, and had even studied the weird stuff on borrowing baby sleep and the rise of baby sleeper pimps before it was outlawed. But Ray had never seen a word about synthetic sleep to suggest Desmond was this close to a replacement. Interesting that no one had warned Ray. Someone must have known. Probably the same someone that had been so thorough cleansing the archives. Or maybe two someones, if I had to guess. The thought passed, replaced with a new feeling. Totally vindicated by Ray's trauma, serenity wrapped me in a blanket of joy. This was perfect. My world was as licentious as I imagined. My work more justified than I could dream. And I dreamed a lot. "And you gave in, Ray?" I asked dubiously. "You're our next leader. It is your place to fight them. This is, or at least once was, a capitalist country. You need to prove it." I loved playing devil's advocate. My challenge aggravated Ray. He defended back. I didn't give in. They have the power. They decided. That's it. Ray, you would surrender to the devil if he offered to be your friend. I was boiling at his failure, even while ecstatic at the outcome, and felt this was my opportunity to belittle Ray. My anger was not because I wanted him to succeed, but because he needed to succeed. This was his personal failure. He looked annoyed and puzzled. What does that mean, John? I'm talking about our company, our work. He shook his hand between both our chests in motion of shared responsibility. I'm talking about making all people free. I thought you of all people would have wanted me to succeed. I did my best. I found the solution, and they squashed it. My true feelings exploded in a full frontal phalanx assault, and I'm talking about your spineless quest for approval. You would bow to any chastisement to avoid a quarrel or risk a relationship. Senators are never going to support changing the system. When have we had times of peace and plenty like we have now? America may not be on top today, but the populace is eerily satiated. Our politicians have a feast of pointless agenda items. Better pay for sleepers, more jobs for sleepers, more equality for sleepers, and so on. Infinite lip service is paid to nearly half the population, while the other half votes right along, knowing their precious system will always, always be preserved. So yes, Ray, I am not surprised at your outcome. It would have taken a much stronger man to stand up to them. Sadly, even that man would have failed. Okay, Ray repeated, frustrated, but still hoping to calm the troubled waters. I understand your angst with Washington, but what's this attack on me? What's this sudden animosity? Ray's face then contorted in puzzlement as he stumbled on a deeper question. When did we stop being friends, John? He had recognized that the subject was changing. We were entering a realm buried many years ago. I was flabbergasted. We had never broached this honesty. In fact, I had never prepared my lies, believing he would always avoid this subject. I couldn't contain my bitterness and so repeated to him, When did we stop being friends? Ray, how far back do you remember? When have I shared something meaningful with you? In all our lunches, can you recall one such occasion where I spilled my emotions? I couldn't stop the rampage. I had spent so much of my life alone in my laboratory that when I had real conflict, my emotion boiled over uncontrollably. I lived by quantitative facts, real substance, black and white data. I couldn't exercise restraint against such irritating ignorance. He needed a taste of my real feelings. I have been living as your shadow, not your friend, since birth, or at least since 8. Do you think such an existence is what I wanted, or that I should kowtow to your magnanimous spirit? He did not immediately respond to my censure, and so I breathed slowly and collected my calm, lying, diplomatic self to salvage the relationship before it was irreparably too late. Ray, I wanted freedom from this dream like no sleep system could ever provide. Then, releasing another sigh, I continued, and the SSC just dashed it to pieces. Of course I'm upset. You were our hope, your work our last stand. Partial honesty pierced the dim veil over Ray's mind. He nodded acceptance of my excuses but stayed on topic. As if he finally understood why I had been aloof and angry since childhood, Ray asked, Then why didn't you leave? Why have you stayed by my side as my sleeper? Why don't you leave now? You can do anything, John. I've seen you in action. You're certainly smart enough. Smart enough? I repeated, isolating the flagrant comment as I again boiled. I should have shut up, but this argument was not over. Since when should a man need intelligence to purchase freedom? Have we socialized Darwinianism by our cunning? How could I leave? I am here for the same reason you returned dejected from the Senate. I am here every day for the same reason millions, even billions of this race sleep each day for someone else. Because there is no escape. Because there is no freedom outside these walls. I'm smart enough to leave, and smart enough to know there is nowhere else to go. I hammered him with frustration and rhetoric. We have trapped ourselves in this system, built our own prison, and lost the keys to escape. Each one of us, even you, Ray, cannot untangle your persona from the vile web our fathers wove. I am here, and I'm not leaving. No brain will change the fate born from our grandfathers and nursed by our failure. Silence pervaded my office, the type of quiet only grim truth engenders. Awkward shuffling reminded us to breathe. At last I muttered, "I need to get back to work, Ray. I'll see you tomorrow for our daily sleep exchange." Ray excused himself out, honesty having broken his will. "Why didn't you tell me, Dad?" asked Ray, following his private review of the SSC fiasco. "I saw no records of this anywhere." Richard Madsen stared across his desk at his son, apparently prepared for this inevitable conversation. Richard's office, housed on the top floor of Sleep Tower Central, boasted great city views, multiple seating areas, conference table, direct links to all key manufacturing sites, and a fine collection of gifts from world leaders. If you were lucky enough to enter this office, you felt inspired, awed, and a little nervous. But this was Ray's dad, and someday Ray would sit behind that desk. "I could have told you the moment you proposed your research, but I had faith in you, Ray. I believed you could discover the replacement and succeed where the SSC had stopped your grandfather. And look at you. You have done all that and more. Grandpa would be very proud." But I've wasted my time and the company's resources for nothing." Ray's frustration seemed to have no impact on his level-headed father, completely relaxed in his office chair. "Not nothing," corrected Richard. "When you started out of college, your heart longed for anything except sleep science. You were lost and directionless. Once you started studying substitution, your enthusiasm blossomed. You learned every core discipline within our company: drugs, dreams, hardware. You led an entire division of the best scientists, and you led them well. This position transformed you better than any assignment I could have created. I trust you will do well in the next job. I trust you to replace me after a little more training." His expression of confidence dispelled Ray's anger. The assignment had matured Ray. "But why'd you let me pursue this course when you knew I would fail?" A very calm Richard explained. "First of all, you did not fail. You gained everything I hoped for and more. But if you're referring to the Senate's rejection," and he paused, picking up a small gift from Buckingham Palace, "then I must tell you, I wanted to gauge our hope for change." This was the most candid his father had ever been to him. The age of leadership was fast approaching. "We as a company are going to make money. Whether we sell traditional or artificial sleep, the Matsons aren't going broke." He shook his hands, dismissing the very idea. "But it is important to test the waters. I could not make the proposal to the SSC, but my son could. And they could always blame me for keeping you in the dark. They blame me for everything else. I'm sorry I never told you about my father's attempts, but occasionally you have to test the SSC. And if you had already known, could you have entered with such energy? Would you have been able to lie about your ignorance?" Ray shook his head, unsure, piecing together the motivations of his powerful role model. "You have to detach sometimes from threats and bureaucracy and put your faith in classical capitalism. Did we foresee this conclusion? Yes. But was it worth it? Absolutely. I read the transcripts. I wish I could have watched you in person. You proved something while you were there. You handled yourself in front of the SSC. Leading SleepFree is just as much business ingenuity as it is managing those self-aggrandizing prigs. Now I'm proud of you." Compliments crushed his defenses, though Ray wasn't sure his father had read an accurate report of the proceedings. But Ray mounted one last resistance. "But you could have saved me the heartache of these last few years." Richard dismissed this circling argument and stood up to end the conversation, having offered as much apology as he could muster. "The research project is over. We copied all the records before you left for Washington and are storing them off-site as potential leverage should the day of risk arise. The SSC cleaners may wipe every file in the building, but we have what we need, and so do you. I'm making you director of drug development. It will be your last research job before you learn the real business, the business of making money." As if he were any other boss, Richard extended his hand in congratulations to Ray and shook firmly. Ray was shocked yet proud. Thank you, Dad, but you know that's where John works. I thought you wanted us separate.
Your sleeper? Yeah, we did want space, but the time has come to put you back together. John can handle reporting to you. He knows our family order. He'll support you. You two must learn to operate as your grandfathers and your fathers.
Empowered by his father's backing, Ray's spirit lifted, and he couldn't wait to start on the drug team. The memory of failure vanished, replaced with the thought of change and new opportunities, of someday leading SleepFree and having a rematch with the SSC.